Today on Inspired Money.
And doing about 4 or 5 different songs. Each one was just the highest quality performance I'd ever heard in my life. I mean, he is my favorite singer of all time, Roger Ridley. And that's where sort of this whole movement started, because it started to realize like music is much more than just entertainment, but there's joy in it, you know, and in that joy, it can really make people forget about the problems, become more connected to each other. And it becomes, you know, playing for change, not just about change on the street, but change in the hearts of the people.
This is episode 86 with Grammy-winning producer-engineer, award-winning film director, and co-creator of Playing for Change, Mark Johnson. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If it's your first time listening, welcome. Inspired Money is different from other personal finance podcasts because we don't want to just learn how to live with money. We want to help each other to live richer lives, make a greater impact, and together, make the world a better place. Today we're talking with co-creator of Playing for Change, Mark Johnson. And chances are pretty good that you've seen a Playing for Change video on YouTube or shared on Facebook. Many of them have gone viral. One of the most popular being legendary street blues singer Roger Ridley performing Stand By Me in Santa Monica, California, which is then layered with other musicians from around the world. I'm really excited about this episode because I'm a true fan of these videos, but it's more than just great music. Did you know that there's a Playing for Change Foundation, a global nonprofit that's building music and art schools in the third world for children? In this episode, you'll learn how Mark went from working in the studio with musicians like Keith Richards, Paul Simon, Jackson Browne, Bono, Jimmy Buffett, Buddy Guy, and others, to filming street musicians. The power of music, how it connects all of us and can break down barriers. And the massive impact that the Playing for Change Foundation is having all over the world. So before we get to it, a quick shout out to Ran Williams, who he and I used to work together. We had a shared client. Ran used to be an accountant and business manager to some pretty big clients out in Hollywood. He told me about what Mark was doing with Playing for Change many, many years ago. And he was so moved by the mission and work that Mark was doing that he quit his job to join Mark as a board member at Playing for Change. So I think that that is a true testament to the power of the story that you're going to hear today. I hope that you enjoy it. Now let's get inspired with Mark Johnson. Mark, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks so much. Honored to be here.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
I think I would go so far as to say my first experience was seeing people without money and wondering what that was when I first got exposed to homeless people at a young age living outside of New York City. My hometown was a nice upper-class neighborhood, so, you know, I saw people that had some wealth, but I think it really hit home when I saw people that were living on the street.
Interesting. So you were pretty observant even as a kid.
Yeah, I remember being really young and it just never made sense to me. I didn't understand that. What are they doing out there? Why are we letting them be out there? And so on. So anyway, I think that I, at a young age, realized don't take anything for granted.
So you are a Grammy Award-winning producer, engineer. You are also an award-winning film producer. What did your life look like before you created Playing for Change?
Well, let's see. I mean, I grew up in New Jersey, have a great family. I went to the University of New Hampshire. And there I was an interpersonal communication major. So we would study a lot of how do people make sense of the world, where do they find their identity to create, you know, their culture. And then I also needed a job at the university. So I saw article for live sound engineer with no experience necessary. So I showed up, and I was the only one that went to the interview. So I ended up getting the job and started getting trained by somebody who was leaving. And for the next 3 years, I did all the live sounds at the university, all the bars and the bands and all different types of events, and just kind of fell in love with that part of it. Just working with so many different types of music and musicians over the years really kind of led me to want to go down that path with my life's work.
Was music always a big part of your life?
It was I loved to sing and listen to all the time. I didn't really start playing music until I got to college. But in high school and everything like that, I listened to music. My older brother, Greg Johnson, who I still work with Playing for Change, he was the one that turned me on to great music at a young age. It was always playing around my house. Music's always been a big part of my life.
Yeah, I think when it comes to music, it's the younger siblings who always get a big jump from the older ones.
Yeah, definitely. I learned a lot from my brother, and then, of course, from my sister growing up in New Jersey. Bruce Springsteen was all she would play, so that had a good impact on me as well.
So after college, did you head out to the West Coast for work, or did you try looking for work in New York City?
Right, I went down to New York City. I remember getting a suit and taking a train down from New Hampshire to New York for a bunch of interviews, specifically at the Hit Factory, which was the biggest recording studio in the world at the time in Midtown Manhattan. I went down for a bunch of interviews. This was just to be an assistant, really to get food for the musicians and stuff like that. And I ended up getting the job, and I'll never forget, he looked over at me and he said, "Congratulations, you got the job. We can pay you $5 an hour. You're going to work 40 hours a week at $5 an hour. But don't worry, you can work 70 to 80 hours a week as well at time and a half at $7.50. And so he was basically selling me on a job where I would work 110 to 120 hours a week, ranging from $5 to $7.50 an hour. And I had just graduated from university. And I just, as he's telling me this, I'm picturing my mother's face, just the horror. But, this was the beginning. So I took the job and haven't looked back ever since. But it was a funny moment.
It was a very glamorous lifestyle.
Yeah, that was the beginning of my life as a recording engineer.
And then how did things ramp up from there? Because you've gone on to work with some of the most famous musicians in the world.
Yeah, a lot of that was just by chance, especially from the beginning, because at the Hit Factory, it was such a well-known, expensive, great studio. So one day I would go to work for Biggie Smalls, and the next day I would go to work for Paul Simon, and the next day a 70-piece orchestra. And, I was just assisting or doing some basic recording for these guys. But and when I would record them, I would be a part of their greatest moment, and there's so much joy in that room when the music's getting made. And then I would see them all leave, and they would go to completely different worlds. And I remember used to saying to myself, I wonder if Biggie and Paul ever met each other, because they would come in and out of the same studio, but they'd never talk in totally different worlds, And I said, but if they saw what I saw every day, they would be best friends, because they're just like each other. So it was an interesting thing. And then I was on my way to work one day, and I saw these monks in a subway station, and they were all painted in white from head to toe, wearing robes. One of them was playing a nylon guitar. The other one was singing. And as I got down to the platform of the subway, nobody got on the train. It was just this huge crowd of people, everybody watching. And I just looked around, and I saw a homeless man next to somebody going to Wall Street. And I saw a little girl next to this old woman. And everybody just totally taking in this music, don't even know what language they were singing in. And then, when the music stopped, everybody got on the train, took off, all in their different directions. But in that moment, I realized, wow, great music, great art, they're just in the moment. They happen everywhere. But when they happen, they transcend all these things that make us different. They connect us to a place where we're all shared, shared humanity, it seemed like. And I also realized that the best music I heard in my life was on the way to the studio, not in the studio. So I could spend my life in the studio and never be able to record moments like I had just witnessed. Well, when I thought about it, I said, every time people make a documentary on street music, it always has such low quality, distorted sound. So I was like, what if I built a mobile recording studio with the same exact equipment I'm using with Paul Simon, powered it with golf cart batteries, and bring it into the street? And that was really the birth of Playing for Change, was kind of in that subway with those monks, with that experience. And then that's when I started to come up with ideas.
What year was that you saw the monks?
That was probably 1998.
It's interesting because the music that you experience is so organic. It's like the monks in the subway station. It's an opportunity for people not only to listen, but they can get up so close to the people making the music. And because of your audio engineering work, I mean, you got to hear Biggie Smalls and Paul Simon closer up than most of us, right? And I think that's a little bit about what you're able to capture with Playing for Change. It's that really human to human contact, because you're not in a big stadium. You're standing like 2 feet away from the person playing music.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think, and there's something so great about music that's just kind of live outside, live in those moments. I used to come up with this idea in my head of like why this would matter. And I used to say, sometimes somebody can come home from work and they had a really bad day, and there's a musician playing on the street, and they can stop and they can listen to the music, and it kind of helps them let go of the things that upset them or that they're stressed out about. Then they go home to their wife and their kids, and they got this great vibe. But then they can also go home, see the music, decide, nah, just walk by it. They got no release. They go home. Maybe they end up in a fight, and their family goes in that direction. I mean, it's really like, these are tools invented by us for this purpose, right? And street musicians, they're the ones that remind you music is direct. It's for the people, from the people. That's music. Whether you buy it or you bump into it in the subway, it's there for you. And once you hear it, it's yours. You get to go and you can become different. You can evolve because of the music. It's been teaching us all that, I think, all the time. But street music is a great way to see that and feel that.
Yeah, for anyone who has Facebook or YouTube, odds are they've watched the video of Roger Ridley singing Stand By Me. So if we fast forward 5 or 6 years from your experience in the New York subway, you heard him singing that song. Can you share what that was like for you the first time you heard him sing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so by that time I had come out to Los Angeles, was recording music for Jackson Browne out here, had partnered with the co-founder of Playing for Change, Whitney Cronkey. We got together. She loved the idea of taking a mobile studio, going out and interviewing, discovering street musicians. So we made a documentary called Cinematic Discovery of Street Musicians. And when we were making that film beforehand, she was kind of pushing to say, listen, we need one more idea here besides just recording them and filming them with this great sound. What else can we do? And I said, we're in the studio. I would just have them all play on the same song. So why don't we try that? So we wrote 2 songs, Blues Across America and Song Across America. And we basically just put headphones on musicians from Los Angeles to New Orleans to Harlem in front of a fish market, and had them all play on the same song. And so the solo was from Harlem to Venice Beach, and it just worked so incredibly well. It was all recorded hi-fi, but it was also filmed. So you could see the musicians playing the same song together, right? Even though they had never met. So then this idea really was something we loved. And we said, well, why don't we make songs around the world? We take the same idea and we go discover what role does music play all over the world. And we'll make all the musicians can play on the same track together. So we said, well, we need the right song for that. And so I had heard the John Lennon version of Stand By Me on my headphones one day. And it's like, oh man, what a great song. I had forgotten about the song. And then I was walking to the studio with Jackson Browne in Santa Monica, and I heard a street musician named Roger Ridley singing the song Stand By Me. I was about 2 streets away from him, but his voice was so powerful. I ran over to watch it. So, wow, this guy's amazing. So I approached him and I said, hey, you sound like Otis Redding. What are you doing singing on the street? He said, man, I'm in the joy business. I come out to bring joy to the people. And so in that moment, I just said, wow, this guy is so amazing. And I proposed the idea, what if I record you and film you playing the song Stand By Me? And I'll travel the world, put headphones on musicians and add them to the track. And I remember he looked at me like I was crazy. But he's like, hey, if you come back, I'll play the song. So I ran and got some cameras and the gear, came back down, recorded him, filmed him, interviewed him, doing about 4 or 5 different songs. Each one was just the highest quality performance I'd ever heard in my life. I mean, he is my favorite singer of all time, Roger Ridley. And that's where sort of this whole movement started, because it started to realize like music is much more than just entertainment, but there's joy in it, and in that joy, it can really make people forget about the problems, become more connected to each other. And it becomes, playing for change, not just about change on the street, but change in the hearts of the people. And that really launched the Playing for Change movement, which took us, currently I've been to over 60 countries around the world, recording and filming these songs. And then from there, went on to create the Playing for Change Foundation and the Playing for Change Band.
Can you talk a little bit about the progression? I mean, it's really cool discovering Roger Ridley in his music. And it must be really cool also to kind of get like the reinforcement that it's like 128 million downloads later. The world agrees with you.
Well, I think that, that song in particular, it's just that it's also sincere. And I think people will always love sincere music. That's the one quality that I care about in any kind of music. And I have mixed music for so many diverse styles, but the one thing that matters to me is like sincerity and conviction. Those qualities to me, they carry music. And Roger Ridley and Grandpa Elliott, I mean, he has more conviction in his voice than almost anyone I ever heard. And we filmed him singing Stand By Me shortly after Hurricane Katrina. So Grandpa was the second singer in the video coming after Roger. And he just, he'd been performing on the streets of New Orleans for 60 years, 60. He was out there.
Yeah, I was going to say, Grandpa Elliott's like the type of character that if you're from that area, everyone must know him, right? He's like the mayor.
Yeah, but like you said, now, we just did a tour in Brazil a few months ago. And in Brazil, they treat Grandpa Elliott like Elvis. I mean, there's 10,000 people screaming. There's billboards, standing ovations. It's so unbelievable to see what has come from it. But it also came from a place with a lot of depth. I think that's what makes people really like it.
Yeah, you talked about the progression because you started with like the idea of a film. And then born out of the film, you wrote a couple of songs. You were able to assemble musicians across the United States to collaborate, even though they hadn't met each other, which is totally wild. I mean, it's such a like 21st century art form because the technology enables you to do that. Like, when did you start getting the sense that Playing for Change was growing to become something bigger than you may have even ever imagined when you first started?
Well, I think what we had done was Stand By Me. It was part of our second film, right? So the first one was the cinematic discovery of street musicians across America. And then the second film we made was called Peace Through Music. And that movie, which premiered at Tribeca Film Festival, in that movie we had Stand By Me, we had One Love, War No More Trouble, and a few other, the first 5 ever songs around the world were in the movie. And in the movie, you would meet the different musicians, and then you would see them play these songs together. So the idea was to personalize people locally where they're from, but then also show how easily they connect to everybody else around the world. And some of these earlier songs even had, Israelis and Palestinians playing on the same songs because, like you said, they don't meet each other. But when we went to record, in Palestine, they said, if there's Israelis in the video, we better be in there too. Like, it was such an inclusive thing. It was never, if they did it, we don't want to do it. If it's music, they were like, if they did it, we want to do it too to make sure we get represented. So suddenly, throughout making that film, we started realizing how deep this was. and going to some of the poorest places in the world, and seeing the power of the music. Like, it's all they have. And they literally use it to transform darkness right into light. I mean, some of the villages we went to for Stand By Me, such a high rate of HIV. And we were just thinking, wow, maybe this isn't the right place to record. And then they started to set up their instruments. The kids and the women came out of their little huts singing and dancing and chanting, and it became the happiest place I'd ever seen. So it was in those sort of moments where we were able to see the power of music to just transcend, the bad things in our life and also the things that make us different. And then when we make these songs around the world, you're really able to see that the things that make us different make us stronger. Because look at how well all these instruments work together and all these singers. So all of that kind of energy that made us realize this was something bigger than we had imagined came through the process of traveling the world and really meeting the people and hearing all of this music and impact. And then that made us realize, wow, this is deeper and needs to be treated as such, So that's why we really try to stay out of the way, let the great music be played with good equipment, and let the people tell their stories.
Was that the first time that you had traveled to some of those places?
Oh, yeah.
Was that also the first time that you kind of went in with the expectation that, wow, this is really a sad place, but then you kind of discovered these people were really happy, even though, a lot of their basic needs were still not being met?
Exactly. The happiest people I'd ever seen were in a lot of these poor villages. And, we learned a lot about, that it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. And I think that's you also realize that giving is getting. I mean, like, when I could give instruments to these kids and then they can give back to me all this wisdom, of what it's like to have been in a culture that plays music for 70 generations in the same hut. You end up realizing that, and the great thing is that it's about music.
Coming up, we talk about Mark's travels all over the world, creating something positive, amazing stories about what the foundation is doing to help communities, and more. But first, the Playing for Change crew ventures into some dangerous places.
So early on, we were in Soweto, South Africa, and I was recording music, and they had I had given my iPod at the time. I was using an iPod to two of the guys that were watching us. I thought they were just hanging out. And I'm talking to this guy, and he says, oh, yeah, you're in the murder capital of the world. And, so suddenly my crew is looking at me funny, like, what you brought us here, And then the guys come back, and they give me my iPod, and they're laughing, and they're so excited. And he says to me, hey, they told me that normally they would have robbed you and taken this, but instead they see what you're doing, and they got your back. You're protected while you're here. So it was amazing to me in that moment. It was like being naive, but it was the context that kept us safe. Why were we there? We were there to record music. Everybody loves music, and their pride is in their own culture's music all over the world. So it's really became one of the greatest tools out there on a human level, to connect people on a deeper way and to be able to learn about each other and create trust, and that's been the most powerful tool of all of this.
The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/086. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Mark or things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. If you have kids, no matter their ages, I think it's important to teach them about money. Most of us don't get enough of a financial education at school. I mean, how did you learn about saving, debt, or investing? And it's getting even harder for both adults and kids because we're looking at our friends' highlight reels on social media. Trips, fancy dinners, a new car. The temptation to keep up with the Joneses is right in our hand, nearly 24/7. Teach your kids about contentment because contentment starts with the heart. Since our guest today, Mark Johnson, is sharing the amazing things that the Playing for Change Foundation is doing, take your kids to volunteer for a day. Give them some perspective to see how others live by helping at a homeless shelter, soup kitchen, or other charity. Another tip is to give-get. That means one toy in, one toy out. My wife's been teaching our kids about this, and it teaches kids to be more thoughtful about their purchases, to really think about what they want and what they don't want. It teaches them to prioritize and hopefully help them to resist impulse purchases. And if you can learn that at a young age, that's priceless. Work together with your kids and talk about these things openly. They're going to follow your example, and actions speak much louder than words. Volunteer together, give together, make purchases together. I hope that you and your family can find contentment in being together and helping others, because at the end of the day, it's really not about the money. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. What's your biggest financial challenge right now? Do you have an account that you haven't been paying attention to? If you need help, go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy to send me an email, or schedule a 15-minute call at inspiredmoney.fm/15. We can talk about anything, your money, this show, your 401k, whatever. I'd love to hear from you. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. At that time, how big a crew were you traveling with, and has that changed much over time?
No, I was traveling with like 4 people besides me then, and I'm traveling with about 4 people besides me now. Yeah. The only thing that's changed is we went from golf cart batteries to car batteries to now little battery packs that are more nimble. So we can, but other than that, it's the same. The cameras have gotten a little smaller over time.
What kind of batteries are you using now?
I'm using just little lithium-ion batteries that connect to the microphone preamps that I'm using and, the Pro Tools and the laptop and that kind of stuff.
I'm curious because we have this Hawaii picnic in Central Park every year, and I take a marine battery, which is pretty heavy, but it gets the job done. Oh, yeah, those are great. Golf cart batteries are really good, too. They just put out power, slower, so they last longer. I'm glad that the music protected you guys, because it does sound like it was dangerous. No, and in fact, I would come home and watch the news, and the world they were describing was so different than the world I had just seen. And that's happened ever since we started. I mean, I took the whole band to play in Beirut in Lebanon. That includes Grandpa Elliot. We brought a huge band, and I feel really responsible for bringing them all. So I was wondering if it's safe, and you do your research, and it just comes across like a dangerous place. And then you get there, and you're eating dinner with these families and their kids, and they're coming home from school, and they're playing instruments and sports and laughing, and it's just like you're at home. And that's what happens everywhere we go, whether it's in a hut or in a house or wherever. People all over the world are so much the same. And that's what this great thing about music is it's the context, just like Biggie Smalls and Paul Simon back in the day, right? I mean, it's the reason I got to be around them making music. So they were happy, and it was inspired moments that we got to share, and that's sort of been the thing that carried all the way through, that if you're in a moment with people where you're creating something positive, then the things that divide you, they disappear. How did you make the leap from the videos to the live performances? Was that for the purpose of fundraising? Yes, it was because along the way, Whitney Cronkey, my partner, wanted us to set up a way to give back to all these communities that were inviting us in their homes, feeding us, telling us their stories, playing their music. So when we decided to set up the Playing for Change Foundation, which is a separate 501c3 supporting music and arts education around the world. And so when we wanted to throw a fundraiser for our first music school that we were building in Guguletu Township, South Africa, we had the idea, well, let's assemble all these musicians from the videos who'd never met, put them together on the stage and let them play an amazing concert together. And that was back in 2007. And that was the first ever concert of what became the Playing for Change Band, which is a group of musicians from 12 musicians from 10 countries that had all, met through the videos around the world and then on person. And now they tour the world as a tangible example of the project. Here's how well all these different cultures can get together when music is played, and also gives people an opportunity to do something local and tangible in front of them, and instead of watching the videos online. I imagine seeing that come together must just be magic. Like, how moving was that for you?
It was so amazing to see all the different musicians together. You know, in the beginning, it's sort of just this experiment. Here's all these different countries. They have so many languages and ways of communicating and ways of seeing the world and types of music that they play. And so having them figure out, you know, how to convert world music from being like whatever isn't American and British when I was growing up, that was world music. But world music really should be the world playing music together, right? All these different cultures and experiences making something bigger than themselves. That, to me, was what we really were looking for. And in the beginning, it was just this explosion of energy and love and sound, you know, and it was just so powerful. And then over the years, they've kept that, but they've also been able to really get to learn about each other and create music together that's a mix of all their different cultures and styles. So again, it like had its big beginning, like Stand By Me was our first big song around the world. But since then, we've worked with Keith Richards doing a version of Bob Marley Get Up, Stand Up, with Aztec Indians and mariachi. And like the whole concept has evolved so much, but there's nothing like the first one that you do, you know? So there's nothing like the first time that band came together, but it's also just evolved into something amazing. And now they go to children's hospitals and homeless shelters, and really I'm just so proud of the Playing for Change band. They're amazing.
Part of the art, I mean, there is art at the musician level, but I think even what you're doing, it's like you're curating the musicians and you're assembling the band, and then even in editing the video, I'm sure that there are a lot of choices that have to be made as far as, okay, who are we cutting to now? Which country are we going to? How does that all evolve and get put together?
Right. No, that's a great question. A lot of these songs, they can go so many different directions. For fun, you know, for my friends, I'm always soloing just like based on the continent. Oh, here's Higher Ground from West Africa. Oh, here's what happens when you add India.
Oh, you've got different mixes.
Yeah, and then, you know, then I put them all together too, you know. So I love that. You know, I learned a lot of that stuff over the years in the studios and working with Keb Mo, who's a great friend of mine, and he was a great sort of teacher to me. You know, his motto in the studio was, the less you play, the more I'll pay. And so what I loved about that was he got people to get to the heart of the song and not just put their ego in it, you know, and just kind of support this thing as a group. And that philosophy helped because I can have 30, 40 different musicians playing on the same song. They know that these videos are going to be so many people that they try to listen more and play less. And then that makes my life much easier later. You know, people try to really listen more and play less, which is not a common practice in the recording studio, you know. So it's a cool thing that translates sort of. And Keb Mo also used to say to me, music is a feeling first. If it feels good, it'll always sound good. So the idea out there when we're making this music is to make people feel good, you know. Not only do we pay every single musician, we also had given equity and royalties. We'd raised over $2 million for the musicians through album sales and through touring. But not just that, it was just also to be a part of a family around the world, to be able to use music for the tool that every musician wants, right? Which is to make a difference. So it was able to tap into that, you know, and to me, it was all of those things combined.
It's really, really powerful. Maybe you can update me with numbers, but I think that the foundation, you've created 15 music programs. There are over 2,000 students enrolled. You're impacting a lot of lives. Has it been like almost 14 years since the original idea for Playing for Change came together with your partner? Like, what does the future hold in your view?
Well, I mean, to me, it all gets more and more exciting every day, you know, because now we have all of these incredible schools, and in the schools, the students are becoming the teachers. But it's also, again, it's about this context. So I'll give you an example. In Mali, we built a school in a village called Karina, Mali, and it's a 1,000-year-old village made up of all musicians and hunters. The musicians there, they average 75 generations of musician in the same hut from parent to child teaching the music. So it's some of the greatest musicians in the world, and it's also the home of a lot of what we call the blues is in this village. So These people are so amazing. When we went with them to build a school, they literally went in with a bucket and a net and swam in the river for a week building the bricks. Then they say to me, okay, the chariots are coming today. I go, where is it? Chariot. And a little donkey with a 2x4 and a wheel comes through the bushes, and they put the bricks on, and it goes over to where the school, and they build the school brick by brick. And then hundreds of kids sign up for free to this school. And then what ends up happening is while we're working with them, we realize, hey, they need to get clean water. They need to get solar power so they can get light in the maternity ward. But because of the music and the connection, we're able to use our resources to find people who can help. And the next thing you know, they're digging for a well. Now they have clean water. They've got 115 solar panels, so they have light in the maternity ward as well as in the school. So it becomes something much bigger than music. In Nepal, we work at a music program way outside of Kathmandu, like a 15-hour drive and a 1-hour walk into this village called Tintali. And there we support this music school, but we also support the Mother Society, who are these women who travel the Himalayan mountains on foot, putting on a play in remote villages to teach the kids and their families how to stay out of the sex slave trade, because it's very prominent there, people being lied to about being married and also just being stolen. And the only way to reach these communities is on foot, and they do that through this play. So that's not music, but it comes from the relationship music brought us with them to be able to learn how to do bigger things, more relevant things beyond just playing music and keeping that culture alive. And that happens in every school we have around the world. So what's exciting is about expanding that opportunity over the years to be able to do more with those communities. And then also, like the Stand By Me video, starts with one man and his guitar and it ends up the world playing together. This is about all these different kids around the world getting to meet each other through the lens of music and art. Instead of war and division, get to see the world the way we get to see it. So that kids in America see West Africa as the home of the blues, not the home of Ebola virus. It reinvents how people see the world, and that's what we're trying to do now, connect all of our different programs together and connect them with programs all over the world. So we start this new way of connecting kids through music programs, giving people a chance to see the world through that lens. So those are the things that really excite me, because as Mark Twain said, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And not everybody gets a chance to travel. So it's our job to show them the world through the way we get to see it, which is this really incredible, positive way. It doesn't matter the religion, your race, your politics, or how much money you have. Everybody's connected to humanity, and music is the best way to show that. So for me, this is the most exciting thing, is to continue on that journey.
It truly is incredible to see the diverse impact that a music program can have. How do you think that Playing for Change has changed you as a person?
Well, it's changed me in so many ways. I have to take the positives with the negatives, That's what life teaches you, I think. So the positives are that I've evolved so much, fallen so in love with what I always had, which was humanity. I loved those homeless people that I saw in the streets, and I loved the people in my hometown who had wealth. They never mattered to me about that stuff. And then I think that as we get older, people become more part of a team. And the truth is, the only team we're on is humanity. So for me, it's about being able to learn that and find positive ways of showing people that so they can experience what I got to experience, see the world a little bit through that perspective. And then also, it's a hard world. I've seen a lot of sad things out there. And the truth is, I just believe firmly that we are the ones we've been waiting for. It's us right now. We get to decide the kind of future we're going to have and that we're going to leave to the next generation. So to me, we want one where we care about each other. And so having seen some of the things in life that divide everybody, I've seen it all over the place. I've also seen it disappear at the count of 3 with an instrument. So, I think that those are really the lessons I've learned, and now I try to apply them to my life.
Mark, I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
Success to me, supreme success through perseverance. That's what success is to me. It's about believing in something and having perseverance. Because every time life is going to knock you down, or people are going to knock you down, but if you persevere and you believe in it, to me, that's the greatest journey you can have.
I heard there's a story there. Can you share where the supreme success through perseverance, where that phrase comes from?
Yeah, sure. It came from a coin that my brother had given me when I was young. I was like in my late teens, and he gave me a coin from Tibet. And one side of the coin was a page on the book of the I Ching, which is the book of changes. And so, people would, back then it was straw, or you could just take coins and then you would roll them 3 times, and the combination of the coins would turn you to a page in the book. And this page was supreme success through perseverance. And he was sort of, giving me that as a mantra, because he knew early on how I really wanted to go out and kind of create something based on my own unique experiences, not go find something that was already laid out. And he just sort of sensed that was going to be a guide for me. So he gave me that coin, and I ended up using that sort of as a guide.
It's a valuable lesson. Persevere, because then you can actually make things happen.
Right, because nothing great is easy anyway. So you may as well persevere through things. Believe in yourself, and that conviction, that sincerity, like I talked about with music, that translates. People feel that, and that's how we can build something bigger than ourselves. The last thing I would say is just about this is one of my great friends I got to meet through all of this is Norman Lear. He's now 96 years old. He's one of my heroes. And he said to me, Mark, there's 3 things in life that remind us we're all connected: music, laughter, and transcendence. The idea of being a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's what I think everybody's really looking for. You're not looking for politics and war and division and to pick a team. No, they're looking for joy, they're looking for inspiration, and they're looking for something that they can all be a part of together that's positive. So, those were wise words, and we try to apply that to Playing for Change.
That is awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. Thanks for sharing your inspiring mission and message of Playing for Change. Can you tell the inspired listener where they can follow you, learn more about the foundation, and how to support?
Yeah, that would be amazing. If you guys visit playingforchange.com, you can sign up. You can also become a member where you're supporting us each month. And in exchange for that, you're getting incredible content, and you're getting to personalize the project, meet the students. And you can also visit playingforchange.org, which has more specific videos about the schools and about the foundation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
So what was your favorite inspired money moment? I love how Mark turned his passion for music and capturing street musicians on tape into something so big. From videoing Roger Ridley in Santa Monica to 2 films, 1 domestic and 1 international. And he didn't stop there. Best of all, the idea of giving back. Setting up the Playing for Change Foundation to establish music and art schools in the developing world. This is a significant inspired money story. I encourage you to check the show notes so you can watch the Playing for Change videos on YouTube. Maybe you'll be inspired to support the Playing for Change Foundation and its mission. If you had a different favorite inspired money moment and takeaway, let me know by going to inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Let's continue the conversation there. Thank you so much for joining me today and listening. If you like this Inspired Money episode, please share it. Share it on social media or tell a friend. Thanks again for joining me on this mission. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kemo West. Have an inspired week. Do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.